Amazing. Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. Everyone who's in the audience already. Love the early starters that joined right at the beginning. So really appreciate everyone joining. We've got a fantastic session lined up today. We're quite spoiled. We've got a long list of people from Capital One who are going to be telling us all about what it's like there, provide us with those really important insights that's going to help you in the application process. We're even talking to a couple of grads who are on the scheme currently, which I know you often mention is really valuable and really helpful. So we're going to be able to hear straight from them, and you can get to know what you're going to be getting up to if you join the Capital One graduate scheme, which is super valuable. And we're going to go through the application process as well at the end and give you the details on what each stage is like and our best advice on how to navigate that. So do make sure you stay to the end for that. So you're in the best position to apply for these fantastic schemes. And we'll see from the job board and what I've got pinned currently in the chat, there's software graduate schemes, there's a strategy graduate scheme. So you can literally just read more and check those out right now if you want. But yeah, you're going to be hearing lots of tips during the session. So yeah, really excited to get going. As you're in the chat now, just do drop in a message and let us know, yeah, who's in really. I'd love to know what uni you're at, what you're studying. Say hello, don't be shy. Save that for the chat. And then you've got the questions as well, just on the right there with the question mark in the bubble. So do drop in any questions that you have. We're going to get to those mostly at the end. And I'm going to be grilling the panelists with questions that I've got in the middle. And then we'll get to your questions at the end. So what we're going to do is start with a quick round of intros and then dive into some of those questions that I mentioned. Before we do, just as an introduction, just in case anyone's, make sure you're all in the right place. Hi, Genevieve from Nottingham. That's what we want to see. Keep it coming. We've got a Nottingham office, so that's perfect. So today we're talking to the panelists from Capital One. We're going to be finding out all about their organization, what it's like working there, and what they do, really to help give you the tools in the application process. You often do mention the insights and how that's important in helping you decide where you want to work and where to submit your applications. So we really be hoping to give you as much insight as possible, and then giving you an unfair advantage if we can in the application process as well. Hi Ade, how you doing? Let's jump around the room then. So let's start with G. Why don't you give us a quick intro and yeah, let us know what you do.
Thanks, Toby. So I've been at Capital One for about 6 years now. I'm guessing longer than most of the other panelists in the room here. And like most of the people in the audience here, I joined Capital One right out of college. I actually started off in the India office, in the Bangalore office of Capital One 6 years ago. Worked there for about 2 years and then moved to the US office of Capital One about 4 years ago. And I've only recently moved to the UK about 6 months ago. And here I lead the modeling and infrastructure acquisitions team.
Fantastic. I think you're going to need to explain that to us later on, because I'm a bit lost by that one, to be honest, but we'll dive into that. That's why we're here. And then next up, we've got Manju.
Hi, so I am currently a software engineering grad at Capital One. I think I've been here for about 1 year, 1 month and a half, very specific. So I spent my first year doing a rotation in a web team, so working with Node, React. Now I'm currently in a backend services team working with Java, and I went to Queen Mary's University and I studied computer science.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining, Manju. Really appreciate it. And Luca next up.
Cool. Hey everyone, I'm Luca. I went to UCL and I did electrical and electronic engineering, and then I joined as a strategy analyst back in September 2020. I work in the customer engagement team. Yeah, I've been working there since I started.
Perfect. Thanks so much for joining, Luca. So we've got strategy and we've got software, the two main areas for the scheme, which is perfect. And then last up, Daniel.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. So I'm Dan, I'm one of the recruiters at Capital One. So mostly recruiting tech, including all of our early careers tech programs, which is the graduate program that Manjeet's on, as well as summer internship and industrial placement. But I've also done a bit of strategy stuff in the past as well, recruiting those grad programs. So I'll spend a little bit of time later talking you through the application process.
Fantastic. So thanks for joining, everyone. I'm sure lots of people are going to join throughout, so you'll just have to pick up from where we've left off. We're going to start, as I said, with an overview, then go through some of the experiences that the grads have had so far, and then we'll be going through the application process in more detail. I've pinned a couple of roles at the top of the chat, so they'll stay there permanently throughout the session. We've got the strategy analyst position and the software positions as well. So if you are really keen, do check those out and apply based on everything that you're going to be learning during the session. We will be sharing the recording, but I would recommend making notes on the things that really resonate with you to give you as much help as possible with that application process. So yeah, let's dive in. Let's not waste any time whatsoever. Let's start with Jeet, who's going to give us a bit of an overview on Capital One, if you will, and just so everyone understands exactly who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So before I actually get started on Capital One itself, let me just quickly talk a bit about credit and why we think that's so important. So in case you haven't done a quick Google search on what credit is, I have, and credit is basically the ability to borrow money so that you can use it to access goods or services, and then on the expectation that you will pay back later. Now, how exactly do you develop the ability to borrow money in the future? And that's by getting into the credit system and developing a credit history over time. And that's where I think credit cards are one of the easiest and the most accessible ways to get into the system. And even within credit card companies, I think Capital One is one of the best ways, one of the best companies to try and get started within the system. And this then hopefully opens up opportunities for you in the future if you want to access an auto loan and get a car in the future, or want to get a mortgage at a cheap rate and get a house in the future. So this is sort of the role that credit plays in my view. Now, talking about Capital One specifically, so we're obviously a credit card issuer, one of the top credit card issuers, both in the US and the UK. And we've been around for more than 20 years, which I guess is fairly young for banks. But we do see ourselves as more of a tech company than a bank. So you will see that tech plays a huge role in our day-to-day jobs, regardless of whether you're a strategy analyst or a software engineer. Now, as I said, Capital One, there's a few things about Capital One that sort of stand out to me personally. One is that we try to be the ones that provide a gateway to people into the credit system. So whether you're new to credit, so if you're trying to access your first credit card, or if you've had negative experiences with credit in the past, if you've had arrears or defaults in the past, then Capital One aims to be the gateway to help you get back into the system and provide that access to you. Also, when we make these decisions for our customers, we don't just think about what's best for us as a business, but we also try and think about what the best products are and what the best frameworks are for us to be able to help out our customers with the right products. And apart from all of these things, we also sort of give customers an ability to manage their cash flows. So we try and give them access to borrow money when they otherwise might not have had a path. So if you're struggling at a certain point in your life and need to borrow money for a while, then Capital One aims to be that mechanism for you as well, for you to be able to borrow for the short term. And then eventually, for some of our more credit savvy customers who've been in the system for a while, we aim to be a path for them to grow in their credit journey. So we sort of give them balance transfer options, etc., which aim to give them a way to borrow money at lower rates than the rest of the market. So those are some of the main objectives of Capital One as a business and as a bank. So it's fairly mission driven and community driven here. In terms of the role for strategy analysts themselves, and me having been here for 6 years, I've played a part in across a bunch of these different dimensions. But I would say that strategy analysts sort of play a role in the entire life cycle of a customer. So starting from marketing and product strategy. So we try to decide who we should be marketing to, what are the best channels we should be in, how much we should be paying for all those different channels so that we're as optimized as we can be. Then figuring out what our lending strategy should be. So not, and as I said, not just for the business, but also deciding what's best for the customers. So who should we be approving? What are the credit lines we should be giving to those customers? After that, we also try and grow with those customers. So deciding after someone's been with us for a year and a half, like what is the next step for those customers? What are the credit lines that the customer should now be getting to compared to the credit line they had when they first started off? Then also just talking about thinking about the best way to help customers manage their credit. So giving them payment alerts or other things to make sure that they're actually able to pay on time, that we're doing our best to help them pay on time. And even if a customer is not sometimes able to pay on time, then working with those customers to develop the best pathway to help them get back on track. And then eventually just protecting the business and our customers from fraudsters and making sure that our products and our strategies are as tight as they can be. So across all of these things, you essentially do a bunch of analysis and make strategic recommendations to senior stakeholders. So that's essentially the role of a strategy analyst, and that involves a few technical skills. So things like SQL, Excel, etc. are table stakes for most of the strategy analysts here, but also good communication, good influence, to be able to work with a bunch of different people and to be able to explain your ideas in a compelling way are some of the key factors we look for here.
Brilliant. That was such a great overview. And I think everyone in the audience, you can tell already why it is so important, credit. So long term, you're going to be wanting to borrow money for houses potentially, or businesses, or big purchases. And one of the best ways to do that is to build up your credit over time with a credit card. And as Jeet has explained, the strategy role is a fantastically broad position, thinking about customers, thinking about fraud, thinking about lending strategies. So that was really, really interesting, Jeet. I really, really appreciate that. Let's move on to the grads then. So we've got Manjuth and we've got Luca on the current graduate scheme. And I'll let them tell you a little bit about their roles. So Manjuth, why don't you start with yours and tell us a little bit about what you do and why you chose to go for the software engineering scheme as well. That would be fantastic.
Yes, I think I'll start with why I went for it. So I think through all my applications, you tend to see that some grad roles are very narrow in what they let you do. So you tend to just apply for one role and you stay in that role for like the whole time you're there as a grad. The one great thing that Dreamy's Capital One is you get the chance to rotate. You can get different flavors of different areas of the business. So I've been in web. I'm now in backend doing service work. I could go to data. I could even switch and maybe go to like a product role and see, do I want to go into product management? So getting that range and trying to understand, okay, what do I like, what I don't like, was really important for me. Because when I first started looking for grad roles, even though I've done internships, for me, I was uncertain as to, will I actually fit into these roles? Will they work for me? Long term, will I enjoy them? So that was one of like the most important points why I joined. So day to day, I tend to do a lot of things. So in Java work now, backend stuff, you tend to have a look at, okay, are there any errors going on? Are there any bugs in the system that I need to look at? Okay, do we have an incident? I need to address this. And then you tend to have like your day-to-day feature work. So like a product owner will come to you saying, okay, we have the customer information service. We need to add all these new features, or we have this new thing called breathing space. We need to implement this now. And then you go around having a look at, okay, how do I look at the architecture of how I want to actually build this? Having loads of team meetings of, right, how are we going to plan out this work? How long is it going to take us? Do we need everyone working on it? How are we going to test it? Even things such as looking at AWS. So we work a lot with the cloud service and doing things like creating EC2 instances, managing things. Okay, do we have memory leaks? So it's very broad and very interesting on different things. And like talking to other teams about, okay, how do you consume our services? Is it working? Do you have problems? Okay, why are these things happening? So you definitely go through a broad range of interesting things, especially like daily, along with like, you know, your stand up that happens, any backlog grooming that you need to do to understand, okay, what we're going to do in our next sprint. And a sprint is basically you do work in 2-week periods, which are called sprints, and then you plan, okay, how many story points, like how much work are we going to do, and that kind of stuff. So I think that's what I tend to do day to day. Try and keep it short and sweet.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you've got a lot of responsibility. So yeah, not surprised. So, and for everyone who doesn't know, because you know, in the audience, there's a lot of people who are currently studying, current students now. Many of them maybe computer science are interested in the software engineering role, but they might not have much experience before. So, you know, even just on a more of a broad level, help us understand some of those things you've mentioned. So, is it that the sort of product owners determine, you know, this is what we want to do in terms of our tech, in terms of our roadmap? And then, you know, you mentioned features and bugs. Explain a little bit about that as well. So anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah, so normally what happens is you have product owners who tend to own a system. So like a certain framework or some sort of like if you look at credit cards, like how you see what options you get for which credit card you can apply for. And they'll say to you, okay, we have this time frame. I want you to introduce this new option that we can have a new credit card. These are all the limits. And then you basically plan it. But then we, at the end of the day, get to decide, okay, well, we need to do infrastructure work. We need to maintain our systems. We have a lot of tech debt that we need to work on. And then sometimes you'll come across work and like, again, a product owner will come to you and be like, okay, so we've been trying to set up accounts, like credit card accounts for all these new people. For some reason, we can't see this data. So then you get a bug. So then what normally happens is you bring that into your sprint straight away and you start looking at it, because then that's affecting your customer base. So those kind of things you tend to target first. So it's very team driven. So yeah, you do have certain targets you have to meet of like, okay, we need to do this amount of feature work, but it's very much up to you as to what you want to do and how long it's going to take you as a team to do it.
Fantastic. No, that's a really, really good explanation. And you're using this sort of agile methodology, right, with 2-week sprints to get lots of things done. So it's not like you've got to wait forever to change, which is I think really, really exciting. So Luca, then similar question for you. What really appealed to you about the strategy graduate scheme?
Hey, so yeah, so I actually did the internship at Capital One as a strategy analyst back in summer of 2019, between my like final year of uni. And yeah, if I'm completely honest, I was doing electronic engineering at uni. I was basically applying to everything, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And I just knew that I wasn't really enjoying the engineering. I didn't really want to go down that route. And I wanted to do something in the financial services. But I was clueless about credit cards. I didn't have one myself. But yeah, got the internship and did the work there. And I just had an amazing 10 weeks, loved it. And so that's essentially why I came back as a grad. And yeah, since I've joined, I'm working in the customer engagement team, which sits in like customer management. So G earlier was talking about how like strategy analysts work through the whole like life cycle of customers. This is the team where once we've like acquired customers and figured out we want to have this customer and we've got them, like basically everything in their life cycle until they enter like financial difficulty and need like special, more like targeted work, which goes into a different team, sits in our team. And I specifically work in the engagement part, where we try to figure out how we can get our customers to engage with our card more, use it instead of like competitor cards, how we can like stand out from the market and keep our card like it's first in wallet. It's kind of the phrase. Essentially work on all those kind of projects. And so day to day, my work kind of it's a bit of everything really. So I'll do a little bit of credit thinking, where I'll sort of just kind of be thinking about which strategy we want to pursue, and trying to figure out from previous tests we've done whether we want to do this kind of reward scheme, or we want to do this with this partner, and then also actually working with those partners, but lots of people around the business like design and tech and data, to make sure that we actually can compile the project and the campaign, we call them, to get it out to customers and get it out live, and working and see the kind of results from that. And then, yeah, that's sort of high level of what I do.
Yeah, brilliant. And so it's interesting you've got an engineering background in terms of your degree, but what you're doing is very sort of commercial and business focused. So straight away, that's a bit of a lesson for everyone, isn't it? So a lot of people might be looking at the strategy role thinking, oh, I've not done a business degree or something similar. But you've kind of, are there any advantages to that, do you think, from coming from a different background?
Yeah, so I think that, well, I think kind of whatever background you come from, it gives you some kind of advantage. So I wouldn't say that like everyone, I'm not like an exception to the rule. So there are a lot of people who did engineering, people who did languages, people who did do economics and maths. And I think that kind of combination of everyone is actually really useful. But yeah, I think like my kind of degree was quite maths heavy and a lot of problem thinking, which obviously kind of I developed those skills and I use them day to day. Fortunately for me, there are no like circuits anywhere in my day-to-day work, so I've completely left that behind. But yeah, a little bit of coding as well. So we use, for example, depending on the team, you might use different kinds of code, but in my team we just use SQL. I didn't know anything about it before I joined, but we had like a crash course and learned everything. So might use that day to day for pulling data and trying to figure out stuff. So yeah, that also probably helped a bit from my degree.
Yeah, but before we move on and we'll introduce Daniel next, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the coding aspect, because that's something that surprised me straight away, because you wouldn't normally associate that with a strat role. But what a valuable skill to develop now, right? It's becoming more and more important to understand computing. So what's that been like?
Yeah, it's been actually really good. I didn't expect it that much myself, but I actually really enjoy it. And I think it depends on the role that you're in. I don't think that my role has a lot of coding. Some other roles where they work more on kind of like analytical models, or they'll be using like Python and other stuff more so. But yeah, I really enjoy it. It's quite useful that I have that skill set. And that I'm actually developing that, especially now when it's becoming really important.
Yeah, that's really good.
To add on to what Lucas said, a lot of strategy nowadays is data driven. So have to understand the data very deeply to figure out what the strategy should be. And nowadays data, like people have been talking about big data for a while, and Capital One has that as well. So we have tons of data that we can possibly look at. So having access to these analytical coding tools is super critical, because it can't always fit into neat little Excel files.
Yeah, and especially my team where we're doing a lot of testing right now to figure out what's working and what's engaging with customers. You know, you're using all that data all the time. That's all coming through these huge databases that you'll use code to extract that from.
Fantastic. And I've got to introduce Daniel. Sorry for jumping over, Daniel. So do you want to give a quick intro as well into your role a little bit as well, just before we go back to Manju?
Sorry, so I just missed you there, Toby.
Do you want to give us a little bit more insight into your role before we go back to you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm one of the recruiters at Capital One. So I've been at the company for almost 6 years now. So I've recruited nearly all of the roles. But during my whole time here, I've mostly been looking at early careers, so all of the tech roles. But I've also recruited the strategy, early careers positions as well. So I'll be talking through a little bit of what to expect in those applications and interviews.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Dan. And then, so just going back to you then, Manju, why don't you let us know a little bit about perhaps your experience so far, one of your favorite projects you've worked on maybe, and what you've accomplished, and how that went for you?
Oh, okay. So let's start with favorite projects. There's been so many. I think one of the ones so far was in the web team, looking at how to improve the security. So it was completely like left field for me, being in that kind of role, then thinking about, okay, security, what if we get DDoSed from internally for some reason by one of like the agents getting some sort of malicious software on their devices. So it was a lot of time of, right, I need to start planning this out, spiking things, which is essentially where you spend probably 2 weeks just kind of doing very rough, untested code, seeing what would work and what wouldn't work. And going through that period and like going to loads of different people, picking their brains, right, will this work? How do our current systems work? And eventually then figuring out that we had cyber consultants that had gone and given us solutions to certain things, which I then then discovered it didn't actually work. So being able to go back and be like, right, given my research and this knowledge I've now gained, I can comfortably say that's not the correct way to do things. So it's always nice going to someone a bit more senior being like, guess what? It won't work. So yeah, that was definitely one of the most interesting things. Currently in Java, I guess just the realm of understanding that, you have to do a lot more problem solving, and you have to be a lot more critical about, everything about efficiency. So are my pipelines and like how I'm testing things and how quickly I can deploy things, are those optimal? Like things like, okay, should I be using a hash map instead of an array? How do the internals actually work? And when you actually get down to nitty gritty, it's actually quite complex but interesting how everything's put together. But one of the good things is you kind of learn it on the job. So it's not kind of like you're expected to know everything. Like they know you won't know, and you're given that time to grow and learn. So given I know essentially zero Java, I've actually come quite a long way in the month and a bit that I've been in the team, which has been really good. And even in the web side of things, like it can take you between 3 to 6 months to get up to scratch, which is completely fine. Like you may learn it quicker, you may learn it slower, and it's completely fine. Like you can learn at your own pace, and you get given the time to learn. So there's like so many good things that happen, and everyone's really supportive. So I could spend 6 hours on a call with someone in my team doing the work, chatting about random things, and no one minds. Everyone's very friendly and very open for you to go and pair on things, which is very, very important, especially when you're so early in your career and you're hungry to learn. That support system is invaluable.
Absolutely, because I hear so often, once people do get onto a graduate scheme, they feel a little bit, they get some of that imposter syndrome. They think, oh, am I helping out enough? Am I delivering enough? But it sounds like you've got fantastic sort of learning and development opportunity, and you're sort of being very much supported, which is really good. I know it is very, very common, and a lot of people in the audience are going to feel that. If you've been studying, you've got a sort of corporate job for the first time, you're going to sort of worry about how you're doing and how you're getting on. But I guess you've got to communicate with your manager and get the support you need. Did you find any challenges sort of transitioning from, student to corporate life, or was that smooth journey, do you think?
I guess a little bit. I think, especially at university, you don't really get taught the actual real life practical things on like the practical side of coding. Like it's very basic. And then all of a sudden you're introduced to these big systems where you kind of have to look at thousands of like files of code and kind of understand what's going on. Especially on like the testing side of things, which is completely unknown to me. But again, as I said, I think most places it is a kind of you learn on the job, and it's not overly difficult. Yes, it is very daunting at first, but you do get into it. Like over time, as you continue using it, it becomes almost second nature. And if you can get like internship experience, that also really helps because it gives you like an idea of what you're kind of stepping into. So I've gone to like internships and then not want to go back to uni because it's so different and it's so much more enjoyable. But also if you do things like open source projects on GitHub, even just looking at them or trying to read through them and maybe even do like, I think there's a label like which is good first PRs, which is like a pull request for you to actually contribute to these libraries, is actually a really good way to get practice on just getting familiar with how to use kind of something you're not used to looking at and like just getting a little bit of practice. But you get into it. So don't be worried.
Yeah, you sound like you're doing really well. So yeah, sounds fantastic. And then so we've got a few questions about the application process. So we'll get on to Dan in just a moment. But before we do that, Luca, is there anything you want to add about the sort of just the experience of being at Cap One? So any of the social side of things, I think that's probably what everyone's waiting to find out about, the events or any of the fun things you get up to.
Yeah, so I didn't know what it was going to be like to work anywhere corporate. Probably still don't, because I really don't think that Capital One has that kind of corporate air about it. In the office, you kind of dress like really casually. I kind of enjoy dressing a little bit up, just to, get out of the trackies after a year of being at home. But I mean, especially when I was an intern. Since we were like working from the office, it was just the company culture is really good. We went to Alton Towers for one day, just paid, to be in Alton Towers to have fun. So they do like a lot of kind of fun days essentially. And even when we were working remotely, they tried over Zoom to do all sorts of escape rooms and things that I was awful at. But I really enjoy the work life here. I've also, like, as a grad cohort, we're really close. So I had even booked to go on a holiday to Brazil with some of them, but then COVID happened, so obviously we didn't go. But hopefully we'll go. So yeah, I would say that like the people here have become some of my closest friends. I think that's kind of one of the nicest parts of working at Capital One is that I just feel like I'm hanging out with my friends and doing the work that I like rather than being like some sort of strange senior colleagues that I feel afraid to approach or anything like that.
Absolutely. And I think for young people now, it's becoming even more important. Who you work with and your experience is almost as important as the job itself. So let me know if you do end up going to Brazil. I've been there a few times, so I'll give you some inside tips on that. But let's hand it over to Dan then. He's got a slide or two to share with us on the application process. And I guess as you go through that, it'd be good to know any of your tips, really, your advice for each stage of the process to give everyone a bit of an edge.
Yeah, sure. I'll do my best without sort of giving too much away. But of course, we've got some people on the call that's been successful in these interviews, so it might be that they can kind of share their wisdom if they remember all that far back. So I think everyone can see my screen, so I'll use this page just to kind of give an overview of the two main programs that we recruit for. So strategy analyst, which is the grad program, but also the summer internship, and then software engineering, which is grad program, summer internship. And we can also do placement opportunities for 12 months or 6 months. There are some commonalities. So both of the programs have kind of upfront online assessments. So both of them have what we call a situational strengths assessment. So that's a series of questions that are sort of scenario based, not in any way related to Capital One or financial services, whereby it gives you a scenario and it's kind of up to you to say how you would approach that scenario. So essentially we're looking for how you like to work, and does that match with the way that Capital One like to do things, and how would that affect you getting the most out of one of these programs. But then after that, they do split into some more specific things. So for strategy analysts, there are numerical and verbal reasoning style assessments, and then for software engineering, there's an online coding assessment whereby you're spending some time coding solutions to problems. You can do it in any language, so it might be you're comfortable in Java, JavaScript, Python, or even some of the other sort of newer languages as well. Before we then come, if you're successful there, to the one-way video interview. So I know this is everyone's or least favorite style of interviewing, but I'll give some tips which hopefully will make it a little bit easier. So the first thing is, so these are pre-recorded questions that you can do in your own time. In terms of what to expect, my top tips are, from my experience of obviously looking at a lot of these video interviews, is really try and do the research on our business. So I think sometimes as a top tip, a lot of people conflate what we do in the US with what we do in the UK. Whereas there's some overlap, there's definitely big differences. So, really try to focus on the UK business and what you know about that. But also, I think we kind of touched on it before, Capital One is all about where financial services meets technology. So without, again, not giving too much away, have a think about ways where you've seen technology really enhance a financial services company or customer journey. That will definitely help. Then if we stick with strategy, you'll move to a digital case study. So again, this one's all done virtually. You'll be meeting with one of the strategy managers, and these case study interviews, they're not unlike the ones that you might see at a consultancy. So if anyone watching is thinking about getting into consulting, big firms like McKinsey and Bain, companies like that. It's similar to that, but it's going to have more of a numerical aspect to it, just based on the nature of our company and the role. But essentially, you'll be presented with kind of a business problem, but not one where you need any prior knowledge of financial services or credit cards. They're designed deliberately to be super accessible, and you're working through that business problem. And what the interviewer is looking for along the way is your sort of communication skills, your conceptual understanding of the problem, and also your kind of quantitative skills as well. So there is a heavy maths element. In terms of how best to prepare, I just say practice. So if you go to the Capital One Early Careers website, we've actually got a video of an old case study, which is great because it kind of gives you a really good idea of what to expect. But we also run workshops throughout the recruiting period where we basically kind of teach you how to approach it, which will definitely give you a good idea of what to expect. The assessment day, you would do a secondary case study interview, so very similar to the first one, but just with a member of our sort of director population. Plus, you'd also do what we call a product interview. So those ones are, I think they're quite fun to do. So essentially, they kind of give you an existing product or service, and you kind of talk about how you would enhance that. And along the way, they're looking for your kind of business understanding of how you might sort of monetize one of these types of ideas. So very much a sort of creative exercise with the interviewer. And then we're also doing a virtual group interview as well. And if hopefully those all go well, you'd receive an offer. For software engineering, obviously slightly different. We've got a slightly different skill set that we're looking for. But once you come to the assessment day, you do a pair programming interview. So working through some code with one of our software engineers. Again, you kind of tell us up front which programming languages you're comfortable with. Might be that you are most comfortable working in Python, so we'll do the whole interview process in Python. But then you might, join a Java services team like Manjeet is in. We know if you know one language, you can learn all the other ones that's required, so that's not a problem. And then we also do a short presentation interview. So there is some pre-work there, but it's fairly open. We just ask that you talk through a piece of technical work that you're particularly proud of. So oftentimes people come and talk about like hackathon projects or a piece of coursework that they did and just kind of talk that through. And if that goes well, it'll be a final interview with one of our senior engineering managers, where as much as anything, we're trying to understand, what you kind of want out of the program, just to make sure that what we can offer, is going to match that. And again, if that goes well, we'll make an offer. So that's it for the overview. So some tips that I might have. Toby, I don't know if you've got any initial questions on that that you want to get into.
Just a couple of quick questions on that, I guess. So there's a lot of information there that was really, really valuable. You mentioned the differences between the UK and the US. What's a couple of examples of those differences?
Yes, so it might be like member of the panel is sort of better placed to explain it. But what I always say is Capital One in the US is a full service bank. So if you can imagine kind of like someone like Barclays or Lloyds in the UK, that's what Capital One is like in the US. So you'll see the logo all over the place, particularly sort of on the East Coast. But here in the UK, we're solely a credit card provider. So of course, although we are one of the top 10 credit card providers in the UK, it's very different to kind of running a full service bank. So obviously it's a different kind of industry. We work with a different kind of customer base as well. So that's, kind of the main point that I was making.
Perfect. And then the other one that just came to my mind was around this sort of scenario and how Capital One like to work and what they value. Is there anything else that, a question for any of the panelists as well, sort of the approach that the candidates should be thinking about throughout the process, sort of bearing in mind Capital One values?
Cool. I don't know if anyone from the panel wants to have a go at that one before I go in.
I guess the one thing that stood out for me was that you need to show that you're very collaborative and you're open to kind of show where you have gaps in your knowledge and be willing to admit that, just because it helps progress you, especially when you're doing like your presentation interviews and you get asked questions that maybe you don't really understand, and in your pairing exercise. And just showing that you can also show off your personality, because what I think one big thing is, you can be taught the skills because they can see if you have potential, but you can't teach personality, and that's also a very important thing to like put across.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I know that these programs are quite different in the roles, but essentially the interview processes for both of them are just based on problem solving. So the key thing is none of the interviews will ever expect you to absolutely ace the interviews. It's to be expected that there'll be some knowledge gaps. But if you're doing a case study interview or a pair programming interview, it's really helpful to verbalize your thought process. So a lot of the times the interviewer might pick up that you've got a gap, but a conversation might actually help you realize where you need to go next in the interview. So yeah, that's really key. And also just know that there's no trick questions at all throughout this whole thing.
Perfect. Thanks so much, both. Yeah, do continue, Dan. Thanks so much.
Okay, cool. So these are just some sort of top tips. So try to make them broad enough so that they're not just Capital One specific. So obviously appreciate, you'll be making a lot of applications to different places. I won't go through all of these, but I'll just kind of dwell on the ones which I think are key. So the first thing is just about research. So a lot of companies, not just Capital One, they'll have quite detailed overviews on their websites, or you can follow them on LinkedIn where they go into a bit of detail around what the roles are actually like and what they'll be testing for through the application process. So it's definitely worth looking at that and just really being honest and thinking, do I have the baseline skills? Again, you don't need to be perfect, but do I have the baseline skills to be successful here? Because obviously appreciate when you're in your sort of final year of university, you've got loads on anyway. And applying for loads of jobs is definitely not easy. So you want to kind of really hone in, on the roles which are going to be the best kind of fit for you. So do take advantage of all the stuff that's out there, before you apply and invest loads of your time. Preparation. So again, this is definitely more for other companies. So at Capital One, we don't actually look at CVs when it comes to the early careers programs. We're solely going off what you show us through the assessments and the interviews, but a lot of places still do look at CVs for their grad and intern programs. So just try to have it as concise as you can and as tailored as possible. And then finally, in fact, one other thing that I always kind of add here, it's not captured, but if you don't already have a LinkedIn profile, I'd definitely consider setting one up, because not only can you follow companies, you can actually essentially look up people that maybe they've got a similar background to you, studying the same kind of subjects at university, and you can kind of see what careers they went into. And a lot of the time, if you connect to them and send them questions, they're more than happy to share their experiences with you. So I think that's a really good way to kind of figure out what kind of thing you want to do after you leave university. And then finally, practice. So Capital One, we've got loads of practice materials that you can find on our website, and we run workshops and stuff around how to approach our interviews during the recruiting cycle, and loads of the other big companies do that kind of thing as well. So do try and take advantage of that kind of thing where you can. And then the next steps. So all of our roles are now available on the website to apply to. So please, once we're finished, hop over and apply to them.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Dan. And yeah, the links to all of the roles are pinned to the top as well, so you can get straight to them there if you like. So let's now go into some more Q&A. Got lots of questions going around there, and please do keep dropping in your questions. We'll try and squeeze out as many as we can in the time that we've got left. We've got about 17 minutes left. So we've answered a few questions on the interview process, but maybe we'll get a few thoughts from Manjooth and Luca on that as well. But before we do, let's answer Genevieve's question around the sort of work-life balance. So I guess Genevieve's seen lots of statements around sort of work-life balance being really important for Capital One, but perhaps just give us a reflection of what it's like there on a day-to-day basis. What sort of hours do you do? Maybe for the graduate scheme would be most relevant.
So for me, in your contract, it's a 7.5-hour workday, excluding your lunch hour. So it's very manageable. So some days, if you feel like it, you can. Well, sometimes you do accidentally work over the time, but Capital One is very good in terms of they don't push you to like constantly do like all your hours. If you do need a break, they will give you a break. If you've had a long day and maybe you want to take like an hour less, you can, and just make up that hour on another day. And you tend to have like, I start working at 8. My team tends to start working at 10. They like to wake up late, I guess, stay in bed for a bit. But it solely depends on what you want your schedule to be. So yeah, you do need a certain amount of like team hours where you're with your team and you're available for your team like to reach you and do certain work. But it's up to you. Like, especially being at home, it's very, very easy to have a very good work-life balance. Sometimes, yes, if you do have something that you're working on consistently, and if you as a person, you just want to get it done, maybe you will go over time. It happens, when you get a little bit too passionate about what you're doing, but it's very easy to maintain. And I don't think I've seen anyone ever do like a 12-hour work day or like work like a full like night to try and get something done. It's really not that kind of environment. It's very relaxed. It's very much as long as you kind of get your work done and you're good and you're healthy and like your mental health is good, just keep doing what you're doing basically.
Perfect. Yeah, mental health, so important. I see you calling out the team there for waking up at 10. They're not going to be happy about that when this drops. So next question then from Sharon. So as someone who didn't do a summer internship but is applying for the graduate analyst role, am I at a disadvantage, and what could I do to make the application stand out? So who'd like to take that one?
I mean, yeah, I'm happy to go with that. But I don't think so at all, because there's a lot of roles open, I think. In like my grad cohort, I think the majority of people weren't interns. So yeah, it is one of the ways that you can get in, but it's not at all like a prerequisite or anything like that. Yeah, I think the main things that, especially from the strategy analyst thing, that you can do, which Dan mentioned earlier, is when you're doing these case study interviews, like really show the interviewer what you're thinking and your thought process, and don't be like embarrassed about what I mean. Like, I think in my one, I made a really stupid error with ratios, but I was talking about it with like the person who's interviewing me. And it was actually really useful. I think that's the main thing, just to be like as transparent as possible about your thought process. And let the interviewer know at all times like what you're thinking and how you're going about solving the problem, rather than like kind of keeping it to yourself and just trying to formulate the best answer. I think that's like the key thing that would help you the most.
Yeah,
that's really, really helpful.
Just to build on that, we don't look at the CVs at all. So whoever you're meeting, they won't know, unless you tell them what university you went to. They won't know if you've done internships in the same industry. So if you pass the online assessments and the video interview, and then the in-person interviews go well, you will receive an offer regardless of whether you've done internships or not.
Perfect. So I guess, and to your point, Luca, it's a little bit like showing your work, isn't it? When you do maths, showing your methodology as to how you got there. So that's really important, and that might show something that you've seen that could really impress the employer. And to Dan's point as well, Barry, if you've not got an internship on your CV, if you've got there, then they really want to hear from you. They really value what you've got to bring to the table. So I think Genevieve has also asked about the case study. We've sort of addressed it there, but are there any other places I think Dan mentioned on your Capital One website, there's a video there, you can watch a case study. But I'll just add the online tests there as well. So is there anywhere people can go to practice more with online tests or case studies that you can recommend as well on top of that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to go into the chat and just drop a link to the video. So if people want to, bookmark that and have a look at it after. It's quite American, bit sort of cheesy, but it gives you a really good overview of what to expect. And then if you keep an eye on the Capital One meetup page, pretty soon you're going to see all of the workshops that we run alongside the recruiting phase. So it's completely free. Just sign up, and then essentially you get to meet one of the Capital One. It's normally one of the grads, and they kind of run through exactly how to approach, without saying too much, how to approach a case study interview and be successful with it.
Yeah, I'll also just quickly mention that just taking a look at some of the consulting case books out there is helpful. So Capital One's cases are going to be fairly different and a lot more quantitative. but just practicing those helps you get into the right frame of mind and structure your thoughts in a better way.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for that. And a lot of the panelists have already added their LinkedIn's to the chat. So do take advantage of that and get into if you've got any questions to follow up on the session. So let's move on to the next question from Adobe. So I'm an aspiring data analyst and I've applied to the strategy analyst grad scheme. How transferable are the skills for me to get into that role? So I think that's kind of been touched on by Luca a little bit. You're at advantage if you've done something different, essentially, right?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Luca.
No, you go.
Yeah, I'll also mention that my teams, I told you earlier that I lead the modeling and infrastructure team earlier without really explaining what that means. So my team here basically operates on the intersection of data science and strategy analysis. So my team is basically involved in building data science type models that are then used by the strategy teams in terms of setting their credit policies and stuff like that. So so if you're interested in roles like that within strategy analysis, then there's definitely scope for us to find you something that fits your interest. So we do use like complex data science and machine learning models here within the strategy analyst role. And eventually, I think there are some caveats, but I think eventual job family switches are also possible. Depending
I
on
would just add to that like the roles are actually quite diverse as well. So you have some roles that would really kind of actually appeal to someone who likes data science and who's actually done that before or wants to stay with that. And there are roles that are much more product based and credit based. So I think even within the strategy world, there's a lot of different roles, and you will often actually see people in the business also like go from the data science and the analyst teams into strategy and vice versa. So like I think that there will obviously be like useful transferable skills from data science.
Fantastic. Yeah, really transferable. I think that would be really helpful in the strategy role. So question from Tahir. So are applications on a rolling basis? There is a closing deadline, isn't there, Dan? Remind me of the date in October.
Yes, so it's 31st of October. Not to say that it won't get pushed back again, but please do try and get your applications in then, because ultimately once the roles are filled, they're filled. So you want to apply as quickly as you can and go through the steps as quickly as you can too.
Yeah, applying early I think we talk about it in every single one of our events. Applying early can give you a real advantage in the application process. So don't wait around. Once you've got to your application in a place that you're happy with it, then do send it off. So question for Genevieve on the diverse resources. So Genevieve, I'll send out a newsletter blast after this with the recording for this session and some of our other materials as well. But a lot of those you can get on our website. So if you go to wearediverse.io, you'll find those, but I'll send out a big newsletter blast after this as well. So from Trinity, does Capital One sponsor any, it's just moved. Does Capital One sponsor any grad qualifications when you do the grad scheme? So I think that's from a visa standpoint, if I'm not mistaken. Dan, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so Capital One, we can sponsor people for the grad roles. I think, just reading that question, I think it might be like things like qualifications when you're here as well, that Trinity's suggesting. So, I mean, yeah, you definitely can. So if something is kind of deemed to be sort of relevant to your role, Capital One is great at creating time for you to study for it, and obviously, paying for, the resources and the exams and stuff. So there's loads of stuff that the grads do once they get here, which obviously helps them with their job, but hopefully they'll be at Capital One for a long time. But if they do leave, then of course, having these skills and certifications it's only going to help their career in the longer term.
Yeah, I can definitely add on to that.
And Luca are nodding their heads in the background. What qualifications have you guys got?
I have 3 AWS qualifications to do with like cloud practitioner, solutions architect, and developer. And I'm currently studying for the OCA Java certification. So if it applies to your work in any way, you have a training budget as well. So you can get the books and expense it, and do the exam and expense it. So if it's for your personal development and you can make a good case for it, or like how you're going to use it, why you benefit from it, then yeah, you can do almost anything essentially. It's pretty good.
Awesome. So the next question is about travel prospects from Genevieve as well. So what are the travel prospects like, if any? And I would just also add on my question here as well, which is what's the new balance now between office and working from home as well? So two-part question there for whoever's to take that.
Yeah, I was thinking, G, you've worked in a couple of the offices. Maybe you could kind of give your experiences.
Yeah, so if you're so for travel prospects, I guess if you're talking about like day-to-day regular travel, then that pretty much just honestly happens only between London and Nottingham. And obviously in the new environment, we don't know how often we'll travel, although part of my team is working from London and part of it is working from Nottingham. So I might travel down, or my associates might travel down to London once a month. That's from a day-to-day perspective. If you're talking about sort of career moves and about career moves to the US, then I think those are a lot more judgmental. I mean, we do support associates moving to the US. We've had associates who moved to the US. We've had associates who moved from the US to the UK. So that does happen quite often, but it depends on your individual circumstances. But if those are your aspirations, then I think you should be honest. Like once you join Capital One, be honest about those aspirations with your managers, and your managers and your managerial chain will do their best to make that happen. Yeah. The second question around working from home, and the right balance between working from home versus working from the office. I'll very honestly say that Capital One is still, that we as a business and an office are still trying to figure that out. So today, as you can see, I'm working from the office, and this happens to be our back to office day today. So as of now, our initial hypothesis is that we'll want to work from Tuesdays through Thursdays from the office, and then continue to work from home on Mondays and Fridays. But it all depends on the individual circumstances of the person. So if you live further away from the office, and if commuting to the office is a pain for you, then you can continue to work from home. We've got a few associates who work from Nottingham, but most of their team is in London. So for those associates, it doesn't make sense for them to commute all the way to the office. So they um, choose to work from home all the time, and we're absolutely fine with that. On the other hand, we also had associates. So our offices were technically closed over the last several months, but we did make exceptions for associates who are just not able to work from home, and wanted to come to the office, maybe because of the environment or because they didn't have enough space to work from space at their home. Maybe they had a partner who they were sharing a room with, etc. So they wanted to come to the office and work. So we made an exception possible for them as well, and found a way to make space for them within our offices.
Fantastic. Yeah, the office looks brilliant as well. I'm very jealous of your background there. So last question on the Q&A is around, is the strategy role only based in Nottingham? So I've got it in front of me and pinned to the top of the chat. So it's both based in London and Nottingham, isn't it? Yeah, everyone's nodding the way there. Perfect. So yeah, and I think we just got one more. Let's finish, I guess, with the word from both the grads. We've kind of got a split question there. So this might be a different one here from Johnny. So for the graduates, how would you present yourself as a graduate engineer if you were doing the interview now? So I guess that's one for you then, Manjeet. What would you be bearing in mind in terms of, might be putting you on the spot here a little bit, but how are you communicating yourself essentially in the interview? I won't make you actually do it, but yeah.
I think probably the same thing I did the first time round. I think I definitely was, I've got a quick personality. I definitely showed that off. And as I said before, just being really honest. So in my pairing interview, I didn't know some things, and I just said, can I Google it? Like that's what I normally would do. And they're like, yeah, completely fine. That's what you tend to do as a software engineer. Go for it. I think definitely one of the things that was really beneficial was, just being honest when you don't know things. Or if you have, like, for example, I had certain projects I'd worked on at like school for my A levels and some stuff at uni, I hadn't brushed up on them that much. So when it came to grilling me about it, I couldn't really give the detail I wanted to because I couldn't remember, and I hadn't like really gone back to look at it, and that can really make a big difference. So if you've mentioned something, or you said you want to mention something that you've done in the past, make sure you do know about it, and make sure you're not lying, because I've been a part of the interview process for some people. It's very, very obvious. You think you're being clever and you can get away with it, but yeah, it's quite easy to see when you only have very surface level knowledge. So yeah, definitely try and like prep things that you know to like show yourself off to like the max.
Fantastic. I guess similar question to you, Luca. Was there anything you wish you'd done differently now looking back at this point?
Yeah, I think just be yourself as much as possible. I think probably in the beginning I tried to be more, I don't know, like what I thought would be good, but probably I felt quite comfortable in my interview. So I think by the end I was just completely myself, which was fine in the end. But I would say, yeah, what I reiterate what I said before about just like showing what you're thinking, and it's fine not to know. I would say, yeah, much better to say, oh, I'm actually not sure, I need some help on this, or give me a second to think about it, rather than just like make something up, because yeah, it ends up being quite obvious. And then one that's more for the strategy role, but in the product interview, just have fun with it. It's really creative, interesting interview. Like I had no idea what to expect from it. So yeah, I would just say have fun with that interview and try and be as creative as possible.
Cool. And just to add on, as someone who's been an interviewer in Capital One before, there's a very specific set of criteria we look at, and how you present yourself isn't one of them. So yeah, I agree with Luca's suggestion there of just trying to be yourself, and usually the onus within Capital One, the onus is on the interviewers to try and make the interviewees comfortable before we get started on the case interviews. So hopefully that's the case with all of you.
Fantastic. So we've hit the hour mark there. There's actually one more question that's just come in last second. Do Capital One offer graduate schemes in other fields outside of essentially strategy or software engineering?
I would just say that like our role is kind of consulting-y. It's almost like being an in-house consultant. Some of the ways sometimes I try to describe it to some of my friends. So there isn't like a specific different role just for that, but depending on the strategy analyst role is so diverse that you'll have some roles that feel very much like consulting.
Yeah, I'll just say, so we only have those programs, but once you're in them, so there's loads of places you can rotate within those programs. But I've also known people to, join as a strategy analyst and then move to another area of the business that's not to do with that, because they just have the interest and skills. And I was talking to one of the software engineers I found out this morning has left tech and gone into design. So there's plenty of avenues you can go down once you're in one of these programs.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for the panel. I mean, I think this has been an incredible session, and hopefully there's lots of people in the audience who are going to be joining you at Capital One in the not so distant future. As I said a couple of times, everyone, do check out the roles that are available now. They're currently pinned to the chat. So you've got all of those software and strategy roles that we've been discussing, and some of them are now on the job board on if you go to wearediverse.io. A couple of them have literally just come out right now, so that's why I put them in the chat. But we'll be adding those to the job board throughout the day. And also, if you look in the chat, the panelists have been kind enough to add in their LinkedIn profiles as well. So do connect with them and check them out and ask some questions following the session if you like. But yeah, glad everyone, thanks for joining so much. Hope you found that really, really valuable, and we'll see you on the next one. But yeah, thanks so much, panelists. It's been a fantastic session. I'm sure really, really valuable as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Luca. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Manju. Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye, guys.